Now let's move to rook e1 move. Here we have two moves, queen a5 with idea rook fb8 and knight g4 with idea knight ge5. I prefer myself queen a5 move, while knight g5, knight g4 is also fine. The only problem of this knight g4 is a strong move of white knight d2, but as I see on my practice, not many people do this move. What the idea of knight d2 move is that after knight g5, they play queen e2 move. This is very strong move, protecting the d3 square, and suddenly our knight on e5 is under the problem because f4 now is coming, and after that our knight will be trapped. So now after queen e2 we play knight b6, white plays f4, knight e d7, and some move like a4. Black is still fine, but because of this I prefer much more queen a5 move. During the streams I will play both of them, but most of the time I will go to queen a5 move. In this position we're gonna look three moves. Okay, h3, if h3 is transposed to the h3 line instead of rook e1 move, which we already have looked in the previous videos. So h3 is just transposed to previous line, we play rook fb8. And for more you can go and check the h3 video. After queen a5, the main line probably is rook e2, we will come here a bit later. So we start, the most principal move is e5. e5 and rook on e1 starting to play. After e5, in the previous line we played d5. However, here we play knight g4. What's the difference here is that after e6 move we are fine because our rook on f8 is opening after fe6, and now rook on f8 starting to put pressure on f3 knight and f2 pawn. So we will see what's going on here. In the h3 line, okay, I will show it from here, knight bd7, h3 lines that we looked in the previous video, queen a5, rook e1, rook fb8, e5. Now first of all knight g4 was not possible. Also after, let's say, knight e8, white will play e6, and now our rook is not on f8, he is on b8. So this you can easily remember. When your rook on f8, you play knight g4. d5 is also fine, but knight g4 is much stronger. The thing here is that after e6 move, it looks like white is crushing here our king's position, but it's very dangerous for them. After fe6, the rook opens, and some big problems starting for white. Now if d6 and d5, it's even worse for white. Now f3 is hanging, f2 is hanging, and rook e6 is the main line. Here we don't play knight d5 because white play knight e5. And after rook f2, white plays king g1, and now our g4 knight is hanging there, so we lose some material. However, after rook e6 we have strong move bishop c3. It looks like we just gain a pawn in order to give up this strong bishop, but there is another thing. After bishop c3, bc3, queen c3, queens came to the game. He put pressure immediately with two pieces. Now, exactly right now, a1 rook is hanging there, and also f3 knight is hanging there. And somewhere we will play knight d5, after which f3 knight cannot move because f2 pawn. Additionally, after queen c3, when rook is hanging on a1, if some move like rook b1 all the time, our rook on a8 will join from taking the pawn and attacking the f2 pawn. So after bishop c3, bc3, queen c3, we didn't just get back one pawn, but also we put big pressure on here in f3 knight, f2 pawn, and a1 rook. Now the only move for white to protect against all of our threats is bishop f4, closing the f line and protecting the a1 rook. And now we play knight d5, continuing our pressure. Now we simply want to take knight f3, and after knight f3, queen f3, a1 rook will hang. And if some move like rook b1, then we'll take on a2, and rook join here and attacks to f2. Here we'll look three moves. It will be rook c1 with tempo attacking our queen. We will look knight e5 and bishop e5. Let's go one by one. After knight d5, if knight e5 then d5, and now bishop cannot move somewhere because f2 pawn is hanging. White here can play queen g4 and sacrifice the rook, sacrificing exchange. And here we don't take queen a1, it's still fine, but after queen a1, bishop e5, our king is weak here. We should here play queen b1 in order to protect against this rook g1, rook g6 checkmate. Here white has some compensation. However, after queen g4, instead of taking their rook, we simply take his bishop. We take e4, and now rook on a1 again is hanging. After rook a1 we play rook a2, and there is another pressure on f2 pawn because of one rook here, another rook is from here, and we want to take fg3, and white has some problems. If after knight d5 they play bishop e5, then we take with pawn, not with knight, we take with pawn. Now next move is coming rook a3, attacking f3 knight, and if f3 knight goes, we take the f2 pawn, and everything will be crushed on white's position. If here some move like h3, we don't play rook a3. We have here nice sacrifice, knight f2. Knight f2, king f2, and because of this line and this pin, now another rook joined the attack, rook a3. Next move we take rook f3, rook g3, and there will be checkmate with our two strong rooks and queen. So if white play instead of h3 rook c1, immediately attacking our queen, we have another nice tactic here. We take knight f2. Now if rook c3, it's easy. We take knight d1, and now next move we take on rook a2, because rook c2 move is not possible. Knight e3 check, and we take his rook. So after knight f2, white should take king f2, but then rook a2 check. Because of this pin, moves like with knight or queen is not possible. The only move is king g1, and then we take with the queen e3 check. Queen e3 check, and then rook f3, and after rook f2, white will be checkmated. This was bishop a5 move. Bishop a5, d5, and rook a3 is coming now, and white is lost. After knight d5, it seems the only move is rook c1, attacking our queen. But here we take queen f3, queen f3, knight f3, king f3, and play knight e5 check using this pin. And for white it's very hard choice where to go, because after king g2 it will be under knight d3, and if king e2, then rook a2, king e2, rook a2 check, and if king e3, then rook a3 check. Anyway, we take the pawn. If king e2, we take the pawn, and if king e4, then rook fe8. Suddenly there is no protection against rook a4 checkmate. Even bishop e5 we don't take, just rook a4, bishop d4, rook d4, and checkmate here. After knight e5, yeah, king e2, as I said, so we just take on a2, and next move knight d3 is coming. And after knight e5, when white plays king g2, we play knight d3. Here's the trick. And next move we take on a2 after taking f4 bishop, rook d1. White should play. They cannot play rook c2 to protect the a2 pawn because of knight e1 check. So rook d1, we take on f4, take rook f4, rook e7, rook a2, f2 pawn is hanging. After rook f1, you can play rook f5, take the d5 pawn. We have two pawns and the winning position. So because of this, e6, we take fe6, and everything is fine because of this open line for our rook. And just remember that after rook e6, we take the bishop on c3. Bishop c3, take queen c3, and queen joins the pressure. After knight g4, if white, instead of playing e6, they take ed6, the pawn, then everything is fine. We take ed6. Next move is coming knight g5, and when white plays bishop f4, now we still can play knight g5, with next move queen a6, rook fb8, and here is the importance of this d3 square, which is very weak for white. And after queen a6, rook fb8, knight d3 will all the time hang on the position, and if somewhere rook e3 move, then it will all the time be some move like knight c4. Also after ed6, bishop f4, we can start with queen a6 move, and then next move to play knight g5 or rook fb8. So here we have very strong compensation. That's why after rook e1, I prefer queen a5 move instead of knight g4, because here's e5 is not dangerous move for us. We have knight g4 move, and we don't afraid against e6. After queen a5, if h3 is transposed to h3 line, as I said, and if after queen a5, white plays rook e2 move. Here it's multi-idea move. Rook on e2 is staying somewhere he can play still. Somewhere he can play e5. And also rook from e2, it protects the b2 pawn. But after rook e2 move has a big minus. We now already play knight g4 move. The thing here is that after knight d2, as was placed when we played knight g4 immediately instead of queen a5. Now knight d2 we have knight g5 move. First of all, knight g4 is not hanging. Second, after knight g5, d3 square is weak. And next move we will go knight d3 or queen a6 and knight d3. So everything is fine. So all these facts is enough, or this is all you should know after rook e1. Knight g4 you can play this move, it's fine, but I prefer queen a5 move. During the streams I will play both of them. So let's move to the knight b7, queen e2 move.